And just like that, it sounds like Francis Ngannou has got absolutely everything that he wanted signing for the PFL. He's just signed for the PFL, he's going to box this year, he's going to fight for the PFL next year, and he's also going to be a chairman for PFL Africa, which sounds like something that they're going to try and launch sometime soon to kind of build up MMA in Africa. And it's all very exciting, but there's a lot of different kind of questions that I do have, like Francis Ngannou signed for PFL is cool, but who is he going to fight, and he's going to be boxing this year, so we're going to expect Francis Ngannou to box this year, and in my opinion, there's actually a very good chance you see Francis Ngannou take on Deontay Wilder, because PFL and Deontay Wilder do seem to be somewhat close, you know what I mean, like Deontay Wilder shows up to the PFL Challenger Series events. But to make things interesting, the UFC and Deontay Wilder are close because Deontay Wilder goes to Dana White's Contender Series events. So there's going to be a lot of maybe interest if that fight happens. But I am going to tell you what this article here does say, and I will also address it in the pinned comment. I'll send you guys the link to the article in the pinned comment so you guys can read it for yourself. But pretty much what it does say, Francis Ngannou has signed for the PFL, and he's also been offered a lot of money. He's also become a chairman of PFL Africa, which is going to be, as I said, an initiative to produce events in Africa, which is actually going to be very interesting because Africa as a continent hasn't really got that opportunity to really blow up in MMA. Like UFC's got the road to UFC in Asia, they're kind of doing that. PFL is doing PFL Europe, but Europe already is pretty developed, and UFC even did their own venture into Europe with the Ultimate Fighter, brought a lot of fighters from Europe onto the Ultimate Fighter on like 2 or 3 different seasons. And Asia's getting road to UFC, so it's kind of UFC's working in there, but one FC or one championship is based in Asia as well, but Africa doesn't really have that. So it's very interesting, I think smart from PFL business-wise to try and tap into that African market, because it's not like anyone else has tried to do that. One championship hasn't really tried to get into the African market. UFC still hasn't really broken into the African market. I know they've got the Nigerian champions or former champions. They had Ngannou, who was the former champion from Africa as well. And they do have Dricus du Plessis, Cameron Simon, a couple of big names out of South Africa, but they haven't really broken into that continent. So that's an interesting move, but that's not really what I'm going to talk about here. I'm going to talk about very interesting sort of news. So Ngannou has signed to fight in the super fight division, and it's going to be exclusively on pay-per-view. So to my knowledge, Francis Ngannou has been signed to PFL to be a chairman, but also to fight, but he's not going to fight this year. We're going to see him fight in 2024 on their super fight division, which Jake Paul is also signed to, and so is Kayla Harrison. So to my knowledge is, he's never going to fight in a tournament. He's going to fight in these one-off pay-per-view events doing the super fights. And the problem is with this deal, who is Francis Ngannou fight in MMA? Does he fight Ante Delija, their former champion and probably their biggest name, or Fabricio Verdum? But Fabricio Verdum is 45, or Junior Dos Santos, to my knowledge, is also a free agent right now, but he's almost 40, and he's also lost to Francis Ngannou by KO in the first round. So who is Francis Ngannou going to fight in MMA? So it's very interesting to kind of see what is going to go on here, but there's actually a lot of kind of different information that you can see, and it does sound like he's kind of got everything. So he's got an increase in salary, he's got the ability to box, and it's going to be very interesting to see kind of what has happened. But it sounds like Francis Ngannou's got absolutely everything that he wanted, and it does still leave a lot of questions for me. I'm happy for Ngannou, I'm happy for PFL, but is it an L for Francis Ngannou? And I'm almost kind of thinking it may not be. It does sound like he's going to get a lot of money, but it sounds like PFL. I'm worried for PFL's financials though, man, because if they've given Francis Ngannou a lot of money, if it was more than one championship's offer, then that means that they've probably given Francis Ngannou at least $20 million. And if you guys know anything about one championship lost $100 million last year, and I can't see PFL making any more money than one championship, especially with the way that their events are laid out. So maybe PFL's kind of on that strategy where they're just going to lose money until they start to gain. But it is interesting. It's very interesting monetary-wise for the PFL. It's very interesting as well because I don't think Francis Ngannou is worth as much money as he thinks he is, because Francis Ngannou pulled 200,000 pay-per-views, well maybe 300,000 pay-per-views for the UFC with the UFC's advertisement. The UFC is a marketing powerhouse, whereas PFL, not so much. You know, I get, personally, UFC advertisements all the time. Always getting advertisements for the UFC, and I've never got an advertisement for the PFL. So it's going to be interesting. They're going to have to try and really capitalize on Ngannou's name, but I think going into boxing is a very good way to do that. I think if Ngannou does box a big name, maybe it isn't even Deontay Wilder. Maybe it's just some random boxer that's up and coming, or maybe some random boxer that's a bit of a journeyman, but still kind of got a name. I can't really think of anyone to the top of my head, but if Ngannou goes and wins, Ngannou's stock just goes up like this, and it's going to be a massive victory for Ngannou. But if Ngannou loses, it's kind of all over for him, right? Because then he's not going to have the pulling power he did. So it's a big risk for PFL. Ngannou's kind of relying, PFL, is kind of relying on him to win this boxing match. So it's very interesting. It does sound like he's got a very good deal, though. So I am pretty happy for Francis Ngannou. It sounds like he's probably going to be getting the money that he wants. But going to PFL, I don't know if going to PFL really is like what he initially wanted. It depends what he can get out of the PFL contract in the terms of boxing. Because when Francis Ngannou left the UFC, it was all Tyson Fury this, it was all Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. Now that he's in the PFL, he's signed to PFL and he is free to box this year, who's this opponent though? Who's he going to fight? Is he going to be on that massive Saudi Arabia card with Tyson Fury versus Usyk? Rumored fights, obviously, Wilder and Joshua, I believe, is also the rumored fight. And then you can have Ngannou versus someone else. Maybe the guy that Wilder just knocked out recently. That could be a pretty good fight for Ngannou. I don't know. You guys might know more than me, but I just kind of wanted to get this out as quickly as possible, give my thoughts. I think it's a W, potentially, for Francis Ngannou, because he's got what he wanted. He's got the boxing, he's going to get the money, he's got the chairman position for PFL Africa, which I'm personally, as someone who follows MMA prospects and prospects who come up before they sign to big promotions, PFL Africa is very exciting. It's definitely something I am kind of looking forward to, but I'm just wondering what can Ngannou bring though, because Ngannou doesn't really, I don't know, man. Ngannou seems to be a little bit lost on like the business side of things, you know. I think he doesn't really understand that MMA promotions don't really make that much money aside from the UFC, who have just kind of nailed it perfectly. Like, one championship loses $100 million every single year. PFL probably reports the same amount of losses, you know, like it's gonna be interesting, and Ngannou's gonna be out here like, you gotta give the fighters 50% of salary, but PFL's spending so much money on having international fighters and putting on events and all this and that. It's gonna be so interesting, right? I'm very interested, but I'm kind of happy about it though. I think Francis Ngannou, I don't think he's proven me wrong. I genuinely don't believe that, because I do think it's still a step back in his career, you know, because he could have fought John Jones. He really could have had that legacy. So Francis Ngannou is kind of missing out on that legacy. Francis Ngannou, he'll never be able to go down as the greatest heavyweight of all time, you know what I mean? He'll never be able to go down as an all-time great in MMA. So he's kind of sacrificed legacy for money, really, it sounds like. So it's going to be interesting. I kind of can understand it, kind of can respect it. But at the same time, though, I'm interested to see this PFL deal. I'm very interested to see who he's going to fight in PFL. That's the question. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm very interested to hear what you guys think in the comments. I kind of wanted to give this video as soon as possible. Maybe by the time this video is out, something new has come out. This is like the third time of me recording that, because I initially recorded it about the PFL deal, and then I found out he was going to box, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, now I've got to delete the video. I've got to make another one. So let me know what you think. I'm excited to hear what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.